All right, we're in the moment. We're listening to Anna Lemke talk about Dopamine Nation, and I'm standing here just taking notes. I'm trying to clean up. We're making some salmon, Oh, can't see it. There it is. And then she like booms into my ear this idea of radical honesty, and she talks about people in AA or people in addiction. How they have maybe been, say, growing up, right? Something happens in their life, their dad leaves, or he's always at the bar on Friday, or, dad has another child that we don't talk about. And these ideas of things we don't talk about creates a lack of honesty, right? I'm trying to find the camera to look at. There we go. Okay, so she's like, radical honesty promotes the following three things, okay? It promotes awareness of our actions. Right? So if you can be fully honest, you can be aware of what you're doing, which is a big issue in addiction, is you're sort of not aware, right? Like I remember I used to drink, used to get Grey Goose because I thought I was some cool person if I drank name brand vodka. And then I used to get cocaine. This is years ago. Or I used to gamble. And there's a lack of time. So when you're in addiction, and this guy Tommy Rosen talks about this. He's like, you lose your touch with your mind, body, and soul, and you also lose touch with time. But time comes down to awareness, right? So what is your awareness level? Okay, so radical honesty provides you with a gateway to awareness. Second thing, intimate human connections are fostered, right? So how does that work? Well, that works when you meet someone and you freely talk about what you want to talk about, and you're not like purposely vulnerable, but you're more authentic, right? So you're living in a vulnerable state, but it's your authenticity that shines through, right? Just that, hey, I'll talk about whatever, okay? Third thing is it leads to an autobiography. We're talking about radical honesty, right? Autobiography that keeps us accountable both to our present self, okay, so currently accountable, and to our future self, which now we're talking, that sounds a little bit of Peterson, right? And it also fosters a contagious feeling to tell the truth, which may prevent future addiction. So how's this relate to my addictions? Well, okay, here we go, right? So I got sober when I went to rehab. And since the moment I went to rehab, I haven't had a relapse. But I've had little moments where there's two or three of them, okay? One, I was at Cactus Club and I went to the washroom and I came out and I went to drink my water and there was, I think, gin or vodka in it. And of course, that wasn't intentional on my part, right? I haven't broken my sobriety, but I freaked out. I think I even maybe left. I don't remember if I left or not, but I felt awful, right? And so the truth is that the feeling of awful was a great sign, right? Because I didn't, you have to choose to have a beer. If it's accidentally in a glass you think is water, that doesn't count. So radical honesty allowed me to have that awareness, right? So the second thing is, so taking addiction from like recovery in the moment to how will your future self react to situations. Okay, so second thing, it happened once at Christmas one year. My mom's gonna love this story, but she put Bailey's in her coffee, didn't tell me. Excuse me, drank some lemon water. It's kind of giving me a ride. Okay, so she put Bailey's in her coffee, and I walked out and I thought it was my coffee, and I sipped it and I was like, oh, this is awful. Okay, but I was able to share that. Then we had a breakdown for 2 or 3 minutes where I'm like, oh my gosh, what about my sobriety? And then it's like, wait, that doesn't count, right? But the third thing that comes to my mind with this idea, okay, radical honesty, creating accountability from your present self to your future self, is my psychiatrist, who I talk to very frequently, the guy who actually recommended that I head to rehab, okay? I constantly talk to him about my behavior patterns. And so he's not a psychologist per se, but he acts as a therapeutic psychologist in my life because he's always got 45 minutes for me. A lot of people, I'm super blessed because a lot of people only have 15 minutes with their psychiatrist. Okay, so he's been very impactful. But the truth is, I even talked to him about small things. So one of my addictions was gambling, and I'll get into that on a video. I've talked about it a little bit, but I hadn't gambled. I literally banned myself from casinos for like 5 years. Back in 2016, I took some really, really significant action, and I'm really, really proud that that's in the back of my history, right? But now and then there'll be a card game, and someone will invite me to play, and it's like for $10, let's say. Okay, so it's not. It's completely different. It's social. It's social, but because I've been radically honest with my psychiatrist, I'll even bring it up to him. I won't hide anything, right? I'll say, listen, what do you think? I'm going to play for $10. Is that going to influence my, and he's like, no, that's not the same thing at all. That's not, you're having fun, right? And further to that, I actually have noticed a few months ago that I was like, I actually don't want to do that anymore, because then sometimes I think of, just poker too much, right? Not like I haven't gone and done anything with it, but just I got better things to put on my mind. But radical honesty has allowed me to stay sober in the future, right? Because the radical honesty is with me and with the people around me, right? And I would have brought that story up to my sister, to my mom, to some of my best friends, right? And it seems maybe like a little blip to some of you, but I told them about the accidental sip of gin at Cactus Club, the Baileys, because there's this community that you really need to develop around you that will help you along and want what's best for you. Okay, so one more point. Okay, so she uses in her chapter on radical honesty, she talks about the Odysseus Greek fable, right? Let's get some water here. Where he's like riding in a ship, and apologies to my friends who are Greek, Maria, but I might get this story wrong. But anyway, there's a group of his men on the ship, right? And they're passing by the sirens. And so they can't hear the sirens, because if they hear the sirens, it's a negative outcome and they get drawn in, right? And so he has them put beeswax in their ears, because then they won't hear the sirens and they won't get drawn in. A little Diet Coke in the morning. I don't recommend it, but in the long term, but it's good in the short term. So, but Odysseus himself, he has his men like put him at the front of the ship, okay? And there's no beeswax, but he's tied down. So you kind of ask yourself, well, wait, why would you not just put beeswax in your ears if you know that that's going to work, right? And the answer is because if he's tied down, he can hear the sirens, not be able to go to them, not be tempted or brought into them, and then he can tell the story of what the sirens say later. So what does this mean? Well, now the sirens are defeated, which is where your radical honesty defeats addiction. And it's not that simple, but let me just look down and see if I have more notes on that, recounting. Right, so exactly. Okay, so radical honesty is what creates mastery in recovery, right? Recounting the experiences. So like people in AA do this all the time. They have a sponsor, they have a this. People do it with priests, and I got priest friends, love priests. I don't love necessarily that version of it, not as that's a religious idea about confession, that it's its own separate topic. I just mean that if you have a bunch of addictive tendencies and stories that you need to tell and communicate and be honest about, do it with a priest outside of a confession stance, maybe, right? Do it with the priest still, but do it outside of the guilt, shame, what type of sin is this version of confession. Still do it with the priest. They're some of the greatest people I know in my life are priests, right? But you see what I mean? And I realized that, guess what? Me sharing all these videos is like a deeper, and this sounds egotistical a little bit, bear with me. It's a deeper level of mastery over my previous addictions and into my future self. Because I'm sharing radical, honest stories, going back, and guess what? It's allowing me to learn so much about my story. Now there's details, and I'm learning about trauma, and I'm learning about my experiences in the seminary, and I'm learning about blah, 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 blah. It's not blah, blah, blah. It's all like deeper, deeper, deeper. And now I'll be able to probably have a better future and present because of that level of radical honesty and sharing. So what in your life, even if it doesn't have to be addiction. Hey, Mike, I didn't used to do cocaine like you did. I didn't drink Grey Goose and orange juice at 6 a.m. It's like, no, what else is there that you could be more radically honest about, because it'll have a beautiful, beautiful impact on your life. And these books, like I'm working on 3 of them, right? Myth of Normal, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. But this recent stuff I've just gone over with you is Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke. She also talks about like cold baths and the pain pleasure, and like how medication and the synapses and like pain is so related to pressure. That's not a word, but pressure is. And yeah, just like it's life-changing stuff. Understanding yourself and understanding how your brain works in response to its surroundings. So again, if you know anybody who would like to talk to me, let me know. I would love to share my experience with anyone who could benefit from it, to engage, to have a coffee, to if you have a family member or even a teen or whoever that you think could hear benefit from my story. I can share about what I've gone through, and not to say, hey, you should do X, Y, and Z, but here's something that worked for me and that has brought me to the place I'm at now. Yeah, make it a great Saturday and just start consuming some really directed content in your life. Be radically honest. I'm out.